I know you guys were just here for a talk about AI and support, but hopefully, thanks for coming back if you were here before. I do think this will complement Andy's talk really well. I don't think there's a little bit of overlap. It's just like RAM and what that is and stuff like that. So thanks for coming. I don't know if you guys have seen a LinkedIn trend of making yourself as a little action figure, but I decided to have a little fun with that. Match my outfit accordingly. A little bit about me. Husband and father, 3, soon to be 4. So my side projects are a little limited. My hobbies are a little limited these days. They're all 6 and under right now. So been a software engineer for about 13 years, and was at Cargus for about 7 of those years. In April, I enjoy AI a lot. As my team will tell you, I really enjoy the song parody aspect of things. So when we had a really good first quarter, we're an employee-owned company at Cargus, so we get the opportunity to buy stock once a year. So we had a good first quarter. We get twice a year. The stock price changes once a year, but decided to have some fun with our first quarter results. And someone said, buy. That sounds familiar. Maybe we can do something with that. So I put a little snippet of an NSYNC parody up there. I'm not going to sing it, I'm sorry. A little bit about Cargus. As I mentioned, we're employee-owned. Around 200 employees. We do ERP and CRM consulting. That's not what I do. But we also have an energy product that handles fuel and oil delivery, propane as well. Some service software. And then, it's a large product, so we handle accounting, inventory, the logistics for delivery drivers, things like that. It's a large product. There's about 90 or so employees in energy, on the energy team with implementation, support, data conversion, technical services, and our product team as well. There's 35 or so employees working directly on the product. We have my team of 9 developers, and then we have QA and product managers, and people who help us write content as well. So, like I said, we have a small developer team. We have a lot to do. AI development has not been a priority right now, so it's basically been, people on and off, like doing proof of concepts and things like that. Not like Andy's team, where he gets to really dig into a support system like that, to observability on it and everything like that. That's not quite what we're doing, but we're just seeing what it takes to do things like proof of concepts that I'll go into here. So sometimes it's a side project for me, like 9 p.m. at night. This sounds fun. I want to try this out. After everyone's in bed, right? My wife included. But sometimes it's like, yeah, I can take a few days of work to work on this. People at work are really excited about this. Let's see what we can do. So, over the last 2 years or so, we've been iterating on some things. So, we had ChatGPT came out in November. We started entertaining it in 2023. Or January 2023, probably maybe when a lot of you decided to experiment with it and see what it can do. And we were like, what can we do with this, right? Can we train it on our knowledge base? We have a large knowledge base. I'll talk about that a little bit. Can it help us write code? Can it help us polish our customer communications? My manager wrote a poem to describe how we do custom. So we are limited. We have 300 customers. We don't want to maintain custom code bases generally, but there are some things we can do. So customer requested something custom to develop and wrote a poem about it. Maybe we can use it for that. Who knows? This is January, 2 years ago. Maybe RAG. Retrieval augmented generation, and talk about that. We stumbled across a tutorial from psychic.dev, which is a startup that is no longer around. I could not get to their website. When I was reflecting on this, it's a data link to basically it generates the embeddings for you. You hook it up to a Google Drive data source, that initially like 4, but Zendesk knowledge base is one of them. Oh, that's cool. Maybe we can do something with that. And then work with LangChain to get a tutorial set up with LangChain to do like document retrieval for question and answer. This could be really cool. So we, you can't see the example here in this chat, but my teammate who implemented the proof of concept had a really good experience with the questions that he did. And it kind of was like, yeah, this has potential, right? We have articles, ask a question about how to do something in our software, get a really good answer. This is cool. So what is RAG? We talked about that a little bit in the last session here. A lot of you may have heard of it. Retrieval and record generation. We retrieve relevant documents from a database. Maybe you do a keyword search, maybe you do a semantic search using embeddings from external databases, documents, or APIs, and then we use that to augment the LLM's ability to generate accurate and contextually relevant responses. So, basically what we do is, we find a good match with a search, dump it in the LLM, ask the LLM, hey, this is relevant stuff, answer this question, give me an answer. So hooking up to a knowledge base is powerful, right? But what about your data? So if you have bad data, it's going to be like a poorly tuned guitar. If you see a guitar over there and you go up to play it, if you're a guitar player, you're not going to play it without checking to see if it's tuned, because what you're going to play is not going to sound very good otherwise. So a good RAG chatbot, for example, will only be as good as your knowledge base. Is it complete? Is it up to date? So one of the ways we found to address this, being with good data, we didn't address the RAG problem with KCS. We had KCS, we've implemented KCS at Cargus before all of this, maybe 5 years or so, I'm not exactly sure, but knowledge-centered support. So the idea is you solve a problem once, you write an article about it, you use it again. When a customer asks about it again, that article is there, free to use. So you create content as a byproduct of solving problems. You have a predetermined article structure, which I'll show a little bit. Basically, it's just an issue, an answer, and what it applies to. And it's demand driven, right? So if you have a lot of questions, generally you'll get hit the next time the customer asks the same question again. And it acts as a collective brain for your team because everyone's constantly feeding into it, right? So the idea is when you get a support ticket, if you can't answer, if it's, sometimes it doesn't always apply, but you get a support ticket, the customer has a question, I check out the knowledge base, is there an article that fits this yet? It's not, but I can write that article when it's appropriate to do so. I'm going to write an article, put it in the knowledge base, and then respond with the answer and a link to that article for the customer. So KCS turns every support interaction that we have into a chance to improve our knowledge base. So why is KCS RAG's best friend? We have structured knowledge, very similar to the question answer that you do with something like a RAG question and answer chatbot. You have demand-driven content, you have a question, there's an answer, perfect match. You're continually improving it when customers ask questions, the context is right there, you have customers are asking the same questions that you have in your knowledge base, or in our case, this is internal. So whether support is asking a question, still it's relevant to what they're dealing with day to day. So here I have a side-by-side of one of our KCS articles and the response from something we've implemented here. So on the left, we have an article on combining the lengths of the delivery route into one route. The article's on the left, detailed with screenshots, but then I can go over and ask, how do I combine route length on a route? And you can see that the first source that is cited in our KCS bot is sorry, excuse me, is this article from the left here. And you can click the link and it'll take you right to the article. When our prompt for generating this analysis kind of gives its rationale for why I picked it, and it is in fact a perfect fit. So I'll talk a little bit about embeddings as well. I won't spend too long on this, but embeddings are the secret sauce for something like RAG and semantic search. So it's like a vector fingerprint for text. So we chunk out words or documents, paragraphs, sentences, just make them into numbers, and then we do some fancy linear algebra on the query that we have, along with check it against all the embeddings that we have for our documents and find similarity searches. Or we do a similarity search based on those vectors. It was a really interesting talk here a couple of years ago. I forget all the details, but it's the first time I heard about embeddings. And the example was the presenter had a Star Wars script for it was Empire Strikes Back. And he was looking for the iconic line where Darth Vader says, "I'm your father." And so he's like, does a search for "I'm your dad." And not a perfect match, but it's a semantic search. So you find the closest word, because you're not going to do a keyword search and find everything you need. You can find related concepts that point. It's really good at doing that, which comes in handy when you're looking for answers to questions. So for us, what we're doing is initially we used OpenAI. We moved away from the psychic.dev prototype pretty quick and decided to just go ahead and generate embeddings for our articles, chunk it up. I think we use LangChain to do that. And then I think we put it in Mediate. But then, I didn't have a lot of time to spend on this. So we were like, well, actually articles are getting archived, but they're still getting returned results. Turns out Zendesk search API leverages Elasticsearch under the hood. So I'm like, great, I'll just send my query, Zendesk search API, and I don't have to deal with it anymore. And it still does a really good job. We still do embeddings for our Jira issues and use those when searching for Jira, and I'll go on that next. So after doing Zendesk articles and doing some Q&A on that, we were like, semantic search is really cool. Maybe we can do this for bugs too. If any of you have ever worked with Jira, the only way that you can do a search is to do just a keyword search. Does finds your word in the summary or the description, and it's very great in that sense. So we decided to just leverage embeddings for that instead. We've had really good results there. Do you have a question?
No, well, good comment. No, there's a lot more to it. It's just there's an entire search language called Jira query that you need to work with.
And check all the different things.
There's AI prompting for that now.
Yes.
For J2.
Built into Jira.
Yeah. Well, you still, if you want the semantic stuff, you still need to you're not going to find synonyms and stuff when you're searching yet, right? They don't.
Oh no, they have a lot of those kind of building some of the AI tooling already. They've made it so.
Oh.
They made a really good set of demos that people spend a lot of money on. But they still implement poorly because it's Jira.
Okay.
Is that fair?
Yeah, we can do that for a little. I haven't looked into those yet. I know I've heard that they are doing a little bit of that.
Yeah, don't waste your time.
Yeah, we'll do our own things for now. Noted. So this one example here, one of the ones that we encountered at a customer, which we were trying to fix. Our customer was on an older version of our product. We fixed the bug previously, but they were on an older version, so we were trying to figure out what the problem was. And it turns out that we could have, I don't think we would have, we didn't have this at this point yet. So the sits and spins term inconsistently does not load here. And this was a fixed bug that we were looking for originally. And we ended up putting a duplicate bug because we weren't sure what was going on. So embedding has been semantic search are really coming in handy for this kind of thing. So the next thing we implemented was ticket summaries. So Zendesk tickets can get really long and hard to follow. You have tickets that are open for months, long back and forth, not clear. We got everything, we have to figure out what needs to happen next. So let's just get the stuff from Zendesk API, strip out some of the other stuff, but throw the Zendesk ticket and its comments into an LLM and just have it summarize what's going on. And we also made the prompt customizable. Not much guardrails on that. We trust our employees, but generally it's been okay. We still have logging on it, so we can see what's going on. But the idea there is that we can give flexibility. So if someone wants to do something special with Zendesk ticket, like asking for feedback on responses of an agent, assisting with writing a bug report. I'm not very creative. I'm sure some of you have come up with situations that you want to extract some information from, but basically the default things we do are to summarize what's going on so far, what the next steps, and then maybe give me something that I can use to put in a semantic Jira search instead of bug. So here's an example of that. This particular ticket, they have two accounts that each have low tanks, and they just need to disassociate from one account. So in this case, we also augmented the summary to find similar tickets, and that was also just kind of RAG search using Zendesk built-in ticket search API. We didn't do any. We're not storing tickets and comments in their embeddings at this point. Ideally, what we would do is summarize each of our 300,000 tickets and store an embedding for that, but we haven't gone that route yet. But maybe somewhere down the road. But so we're just leveraging Zendesk internal search for that, or API search rather. So you can see the summary there. This one wasn't particularly long, but still has done a very good job of that for longer tickets in the past. And so here's an example of editing your prompts. This is a default prompt, so summarize the interactions. I had a system prompt in here as well that says for each section that we want to outline, return it in a given JSON with the title of the section and then the contents of that section, so the user can just provide what they want to see. So I'm going to change it here to say, provide your own feedback and opinion on the quality of the agent interaction and give your own suggestions for product improvements based on the content of the ticket. And so here we see the results of that. It goes ahead and evaluates PAL. I think this is 4.0 mini for this particular one. Commenting on the assistance provided and some potential product improvements. Like a more streamlined interface for that on the UI side of the product. It's a pretty good job. So more recently, something that we released is a Zendesk plugin. So you've worked in Zendesk before. So what I've shown before is just a separate site that we have posted internally, and some of the feedback we got was it'd be a lot nicer to just be able to do this kind of stuff with Zendesk. So we spun up a plugin which we just released last week internally. So it just runs the contents of the ticket, the subject, the metadata, and all the comments through a bunch of prompts, and then do a RAG search on it to find a relevant, any relevant article that would correspond to that ticket. Summarizes some of the back and forth, and gives here, what's the core issue here? What's the context? What part of the product are we looking at? And then recommends a solution based on a RAG response. And then the plugin also has a tab where we can just do a question and answer like we did before, like we open ended one. If you have a different question to answer. So here's an example of that, where all the, I left our employee information, not taking all the customer information is gone. So this is a screenshot of Zendesk, and our plugin is over here on the right. So we have with question, the main question about the ticket, or why we put in the ticket in the first place. And there's a category, there's nothing fancy here, it's not looking at it, it's the element is best guess on the category, we're not telling it to match it to, pre-existing list of categories that we have. Which would be one way to expand this, right? Do some auto triage and recategorizing this. Some relevant details from the back and forth. And then scrolling down to the left, so the left screenshot shows an example of something from an internal knowledge base that was returned that will help the agent move these tickets along, move it out. And this is a different status than the problem was, but the script would still apply here, thankfully. And then the conversation tab here just summarizes the back and forth, the public-facing interactions and internal updates as well. So now we're going to talk about the human element and AI and support and all this. So having a response from an AI when you're expecting a human doesn't always feel great, and it's probably not. If you're expecting it, it's one thing, but for example, some of you may have heard what happened with Cursor, and their chatbot, their support was not indicated as AI generated, so the support agent said, actually, we have a new policy where you can't run, Cursor is an AI IDE forged from VS Code, and so apparently developers, I don't do this, but run it on multiple machines. So the support agent said that they have a policy where the user was having an issue where they had it on more than one machine, the one would just stop working, or they always stop working and so forth. But the support agent was like, yeah, we actually have a policy where you can't do that. And they're like, what? Can't do that? And the user went on Reddit and was like, this is a thing, this is not good. And the CEO got on there, the CEO. It's like, actually, no, that's not a policy. This was an AI chatbot, sorry guys. So, and now I think they improved they appended any AI generated responses with indicating that it is so. And then the other headline I have here was AI chatbot that sold a car for $1. Some prompt engineering haggling there.
There was also a legally binding also without the original terms here.
Yeah, that's right. They enforced that. Dealership learned a lesson there, I think.
Oh, no, they didn't.
They still did?
You should hear what happened in the service department.
Oh, jeez. So, we want to augment support workflow with tools like this instead of replacing them. And one of the things we did, we had the initial version of the Zendesk plugin assist with drafting responses, but I'll talk about this a little bit too, but our customers aren't going to want, they don't want sterile like LLM. Sure you can give it personality and all that, but we're not going to automate empathy or expertise. If a lot of our customers have specific situations that our support agents know about and can speak to, we're a small enough team that there's communication. We have 300-ish energy customers and 20 to 30 support staff. And there's a lot of relationships, a lot of consistent relationships there. So, throwing that away would be a mistake for us. Right now, these tools are opt-in. you want to supplement your workload that way, go ahead. AI is not going to do a great job with the tone needed in each situation. Like maybe, someone is new to their role at like one of our customers is new to their role. And so like you're going to communicate with them differently. Or maybe something happened in the customer's personal life. Like we are familiar with certain of those situations, or like someone at a customer's company passed away. Like we need to know those things. We're not going to just feed those details to an LLM. And we need this in software engineers as well. We need accountability when we're using AI tools. We're not just going to throw the code on the wall and be like, I think this should work, it'll look good. We actually need to maintain accountability, right? You can't just have an LLM spit out code and just hope it works, going to vibe code and everything. You gotta verify a little better. So AI is going to augment, our people. We're not going to replace them. Our human experts provide empathy, context, and critical thinking that keep our customers and our code on track. I'm using the word agentic workflows. If any of you were in the last talk, that was a common word for, I guess, any spread maybe, I don't know. But here we go. So what's next here? We're going to talk about that a little bit. That's a 3:30, right?
Yeah, we've got about 25 minutes.
So what is an agent, right? It's a very overloaded term right now. That like on Stack Overflow podcast that I listen to. There's a guy who's like LLM independent, just performs a whole bunch of tasks. But when you're talking about AI, there's a few common ingredients, right? You have an LLM, and you have some prompt templates. You have an orchestration layer that we talked about this a little bit in the last session. But maybe we have something that decides what tool to pick, an MCP, something like that. Some tool integrations, and you have some memory and state to keep track of what we're doing at any given time. Some potential types of agents. You have a conversational agent, make use of these tools. Make use of the tools in a conversation like that you're having with an AI chatbot to go out and do things like searches. Task-oriented, where you're asking to do something using tools to, go edit this file, go make an appointment, go book a flight. I don't think I'd want anything like that, but people do that, I guess. I don't know. Or a fully autonomous agent that just, works from a list of tasks in a queue stored in a database. So what could we do with this? I'm talking about we as a company, I guess, and with our products as developers. We have a code base agent to answer dev questions that just, we store a whole bunch of embeddings for our code base, or just make the file system available. Like an agent go through and answer questions. We have a ticket agent, answer questions about a ticket or perform tasks on tickets. Like perform tasks is in like gathering information. We're not, theoretically you could triage, but at this point I'm not super comfortable with just being like, yeah, well, mark that solved is probably good. You want human in the loop there. But answering questions is in like summarizing or pulling out information for use somewhere else, by report, KCS article, whatever. We have a Jira agent to find bugs or even help fill out a new bug report. So, if a Jira agent has the ability to do a semantic search on bugs, I say, hey, do we have any bugs related to this customer note screen sitting and spinning? Maybe I can get some input there. Or I have this issue. Help me, if I have a tool that hooks up to Jira's API to create a new bug. I want to create a new bug. Like, help me put all this information I have in fields that are required for making a new bug. Like, steps to reproduce. What do I expect? What's the context around this? Or a knowledge base agent to find articles or write ACS articles, from context like a ticket, for example. Or, like, can we string all these together, right? Can we just have something that says, can I, well, it's like that, I don't know. But for the code base agent, this is something we've experimented with a little bit. I talked about Cursor before. Cursor, when you install it, you open up a project, it'll go ahead and index your code base for use when you ask questions as an agent that you can tell to perform coding tasks or ask questions about your code base. So when you ask a question about code base or when you want it to do something, it leverages the tools that it has available, reading the files, editing the files, doing semantic search on your code to answer questions, form tasks, whatever. So we found that it does a really good job if you say, like, I want to find out how the texting implementation works. So like for our product, we send out text messages to notify our customers of things like, hey, we're en route to your house to do a HVAC tune-up, or you have a delivery dispatch, so sometime today, or you have a balance due on your account. Tell me how that works, and it does a really good job of like looking through the code. Here's the SQL tables where we store the data. Here's the messaging loop that we go through to send the text messages through Twilio. Have another little demo of that. Not a demo, but we were like, maybe we could just not rely on Cursor if we have other people in the company that want to ask questions about how the code works within reason. We haven't exposed this yet or anything, so we're still in the proof of concept phase. But what if we structured something, made something to, give it a bunch of tools like, so over here, we have a code base search, which is one Cursor does as well. A lot of this is trying to replicate how like an engineer would go through to answer questions about code. Do a semantic search, read a file in, find a file, search for files, directory context. This is not working yet, but I'll talk about a little more about that later. And then, did we get everything that we need from all of these things? All right, let's go ahead, format the response, and respond as a user. So that's how answering questions in a code base would work, the potential workflow for that. So we have the proof of concept of this in Python based on the Pocket Flow framework. It's kind of, I don't have much else to share about it, but look it up if you're interested. It's like a 100-line library, but it does a really good job of it's very LLM friendly. It's one of the, it helps kind of market itself. Because you can easily be put into a prompt and say like, hey, I want to make this workflow. I want these tools. I want to do that like in an AI, right? So you're asking AI to make this, but it also it lends itself well to agent implementations where you have a node, you have like a pre-step, decide what I'm going to do, an execute step, and a post step where I'm going to actually, for this node, I'm going to send my results from the graph back to the decision agent. I have my results. What am I going to do next? And it's a whole workflow outlining, how everything fits together like that. So this is just kind of some output of when I ran this before. Give me a high level of how the messaging events work in our code. Messaging events run is what powers our texting implementation. So you can see it's going to initialize, pull up my local chroma embeddings that I stored for our code base. For whatever reason, need to tweak this a little bit. It's not still proof of concept. It always does the semantic code base search. It doesn't actually read in the files. I guess it gets enough. But So you can see, you do the initialize, complete it, decision node comes, I'm going to say, I'm sorry, it doesn't actually go to code research, but this is, let's see. Can I play this? Okay, good. So this is what was the output from this, right? So it goes through our SQL, or some of it anyway, right? How it works, processing events. You see these are snippets, so it's not actually reading the whole file, work in progress. But you can see the potential here, right? If you're a new engineer, you're trying to do ramp up, trying to figure out how something works, you know, there's definitely value in asking your teammates, but this is a quick and easy way to ramp up as well. Agent to agent workflows. So I was kind of alluding to this before. So, maybe we can say like, hey, I want to find Jira bugs for this given ticket. So I'm going to, this is my prompt, right? The agent would look up the Jira, look up the Zendesk ticket, parse through what the problem is, be like, all right, here's the problem, and send it back to the orchestrator agent. The orchestrator agent would say, all right, well, I'm going to check into with Jira now. I need to find out a search term. They negotiate that somewhere in there. But the search term to pass to Jira for finding a bug. Jira finds a bug, returns it back. So we say to the user, here's here's a bug that could work, maybe one of these three, something like that. And that's super simple, right? That just saves you a whole bunch of work. A whole bunch of manual searching, especially, that can be avoided. Propose an approach to solve this particular Jira item, right? I've done this a little bit with Cursor right now. So Cursor lets you do MCP tools, which MCP is basically exposing APIs to an LLM. So if I had a Jira MCP server running on my machine, I say the MCP server knows what it can do, and it knows what it. So if I kind of hint at it, like, hey, I want to solve the bug card 23456, and it knows that I say Jira item, knows it's going to go out, use the MCP tool, read the information about the bug, and use whatever's in there to, for example, look through the code base for the corresponding functionality, suggest a fix. Write a KCS article to document the process to fix the issue. Fix the issue would be not a code issue, but whatever issue the customer is running into for a particular ticket. Let's leverage, so first we check the Jira ticket, read in that information, see what was used to solve the problem. Let's write a KCS article based on the criteria we have for writing a KCS article requirements, what it should look like, and things like that.
More of a comment. So this is neat. It's like you see the interaction between what you're trying to do, Jira's and that's kind of pages working together in that loop. Why did you guys just buy a product that kind of does it already?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because GitLab has it built in, so the Jira stuff.
I haven't heard about that yet. I'll check that out.
Okay.
And this is more just like, what could we do?
Okay.
Maybe avoiding some vendor box-in type of stuff, like customize it ourselves, figuring out how it works. But that's a good point. There are products that hopefully will be able to do this at some point in the future. But that's fine.
I wonder, had you considered MCP? Because maybe that is how the view
Yeah.
of that same sort of increase in these integrations that you can use.
Yeah, and MCP, I feel like it works like locally. I haven't explored enough to know like how that scales. Like if you want people to, I guess you have this issue with your accessing APIs, but like how it works when you're actually like using it in a hosted format. But it works really well locally. But hosted is something you have to figure out too. But we know how to write APIs too. But yeah, I don't know. There's like a local workflow that seems more suited for at this point, but that is something to look into before we go too far with it, because I don't really know who does in this room, right? Red means. Yeah. So some key takeaways here. This table will only be as good as your data. So thankfully we have something like KTS in place on our end to make sure we have good stuff there. We're still going to need a human in the loop, right? I'm sure you guys have seen this in playing with AI so far, but sometimes it seems like the distance there is getting pretty big. Like how far along we need to be in the loop, but especially in support, when you have human interactions there. And you should be using AI. I think already, especially like development workloads, it's going to be huge, but you're still counting with what you generate. And there's still considerations too of like overusing it and doing critical thinking, right? I think that's a big one for sure. But yeah, that's all I got.
The last point you had, so my question is, is there someone, like a particular person that may have gotten too reliant on the AI tools to the point where it's ultimately needing a little bit of retraining or maybe some downtime away from it, maybe that's the regular roots or something?
Looking at me, Matt?
Yeah.
That's my teammate. I was just thinking that too. I'm probably the guy at this point, but I find myself thinking about it a lot, which, in terms of solving problems, like something I'm thinking through for myself personally too. On my team, I haven't encountered that yet, but we're a small team. We talk a lot. I think my team's using it pretty responsibly so far.
So have you thought about making like a series of like standards for yourself that you're worrying about for people to watch for like, because it sounds like you're probably on one end of the spectrum, so it's like, no one worse than me.
That's a good, I hadn't thought about that. I'll have to think about that. In the back.
So yeah, this kind of goes in more with like the human support and the ethics of it. Do you feel like we as companies and as humans obviously have kind of an obligation to lead at the very beginning? I know you mentioned about AI, like the car incident, the $1 and all these like weird kind of occurrences. Don't you feel like we should start putting scripts and waivers at the beginning of the LLM system, like warning, this is, what you interact with and you get fed back from the AI should not under any circumstance be held liable in court, cover the company, like just cover all those, like get legal team involved and start stating, hey, AI is tone deaf, it does not feel emotion. Do not expect like any words that come back, do not take offense, this is a robot.
This is not binding, like, I don't.
He's going to write it.
Yeah, that boggles my mind that, that car dealership or whatever did not.
No one would
Have
do
that.
an early adopter. It's
Yeah,
an early
yeah.
adopter problem. It's an early adopter fee.
Yeah, sure. But if you're gonna rely on someone else like that, you would think to train them to.
Well, to kind of build off that too, like, this is a prime example of a student I went to school with. She lives in SoCal, and we went to a conference, and there was robots, like robotics, and the robot basically killed itself. It pulled its limbs off, and then it finally pulled its head off, and it detached the system. She was literally crying. And I mean, I get it. Everybody's got their emotions and their places and their safe spaces, but it's not alive. It's not a human. It doesn't have emotion. But people are starting to feel emotion towards non-living things. So this is going to be something of the future discussion. People are literally crying when they watch AI and bots kill themselves, but they're not living. Like, why are you crying? It's insensitive. Like, why are you crying over a robot?
I think my opinion there would be like there's something like when you see something that acts like a human, talks like a human.
They get that perception.
Yeah, there's a perception. There's like you're trained that way almost to be like this is human. So like there's not always that like you almost have to keep reminding yourself that. But I understand it from that perspective. I'm not offended either. I think it's weird.
Yeah.
But I don't understand that.
So the point at which there's a potential to have AI feed content back into that knowledge base pool, and to me that's somewhat analogous to taking a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy, that eventually you're going to have kind of entropy occur, where it's going to degrade the integrity or potentially degrade the integrity of your source content.
Yeah,
And how do you handle that or prevent that from happening?
that's a good question. I think initially, I think there's a good use case for having, articles written based on how the code works, for example. But, there is, I think, a point where it's this is just kind of slop. So you just duplicate, no one's using this, this is, I would want to keep a human in the loop there in a couple ways. You're responsible for writing this, your name's gonna be on the top there. So you're gonna be accountable for it. And, I would also want feedback on the articles themselves too. So as people are using them, is this actually a good one? Is this still useful? But yeah, I think accountability for what I instruct the AI to write, I want to be accountable for that. I want to make other people accountable for that.
Open source, a lot of open source libraries and projects are now banning AI contributions because they're worried about it, because AI trains on some of the slop it's creating, it is water and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's the gates. When you have something like open source, anyone can do it. I think, internally we're a smaller company. I think I would hope that there's a trust there that you're down there. We're going to trust what you're submitting. But for open source library, when anyone can just do it, I would think the gates would, gotta close it off at some point there.
This would probably be more applicable for a closed ecosystem, something that you can control every element of. But I'm wondering if a simple kind of tagging system that just shows okay, this was a response that was AI generated. This is not allowed to be trained on for future purposes, and if that could help to cut the synthetic data feedback loop. So that you're not training AI on AI generated content.
Yeah. I feel like there is still good stuff that can be generated, especially internally. I feel like we are kind of getting to the point where it's there's so much out there, you're training on that now. So for us, we have a lot of documentation gaps. So I would love to see some documentation written well, don't get me wrong, but written well with AI, but hopefully we can use that in AI responses, but only to 2 degrees, to 3 degrees maybe.
Or even if it was validated thereafter by a person,
Yeah,
you could
yeah.
remove that tag.
Oh, that's a good point, yeah, that's a good idea.
We've got time for one more question, Scott, and then we'll give him a round of applause and then following questions.
I'm back.
As far as, you got what, 200-300 employees?
Yeah.
Something like that? So culturally, what's your distribution of AI supporters, AI naysayers? Do you feel a cultural mix, or I'm very curious?
Yeah, I'd say we're still pretty early on in that. I don't have a great sense of that. We're still we are part of a group in the company that's kind of evaluating how we can be leveraging AI responsibly. Do we, even just recently we're talking about maybe you should be staying away from these products where kind of like Cursor, you pay $20 a month, $40 a month, where it's APIs for LLMs are usage based. So they're incentivized to cut down costs there, or else if people are using too much tokens, they're just gonna jack up the price, right? So being aware of all that, kind of discussing all that, it's hard to say where I'd say we're still pretty early. I don't think we have anyone too overly zealous on it at this point, but we're just kind of being cautious about it and kind of advising others to do the same. Trying to get some good policies out there. Maybe provide some avenues for if you're going to use it, spin up Open Web UI, so where you can pick a model and use it, and see the cost for what you're doing, to see if, make it worth their while. That way, if we don't have employees using the free version, that will train on data, things like that.
Well, let's give Scott a thanks.